Yeshua had no broken bones. They did not break his bones. He was crucified, and he died. And they pierced his side. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff that can be said about all of that. There's doctors that have written articles about the water and blood coming out together. There's midrash about that. There's teachings about that from all over the place, and I'm not going to go into any of that. I want to say this. Yeshua is the Lamb of God. You know, we have this big focus on the Lion of Judah, the Lion of Judah, the Lion of Judah. When the Lion of Judah shows up in the book of Revelation, he shows up as a lamb who has been slaughtered. There is a humility in that. There is a quietness in that. There is a power in the willingness to go to the cross for us. Sometimes we see power as this big, hard thing, not realizing that God is the one with the power. Is he coming back as a lion roaring and all of that? I can read Revelations a couple of different ways on some of that. And yes, there will be a battle. Yes, the King of Heaven will win against the hordes on the earth. Yes, all of that will take place. But between now and then, we never have any place in Scripture where we are told to take up arms and fight. We have all kinds of places where we are told to serve, to love our enemy, to take care of those around us. Is there a time to stand up and fight? Yeah. If someone's entered my house and is going after my kids, they're dead meat. Right? It's called protection. We are to protect the vulnerable, protect the innocent. Do you really think that, having been told that the firstborn in the households of Egypt are going to die, that they didn't let other people know about it? Sometimes I wonder, we are told that a group came out of Egypt, that there was a large number of Israelites that come out, but there's also a mixed multitude that comes with them. This mixed multitude of people who have been in Egypt, who have been watching the hand of God. They have been seeing what has been done. They have looked at Pharaoh and they've said, you are not a protector. You are not who you say you are. You are not doing what you said you would do. I'm not following you anymore. It's interesting because I don't remember the exact numbers, but approximately, if I remember it right, not even all the Israelites left Egypt. If I remember right, about a third of Israelites left Egypt, and about 2/3 stayed behind. That's a large group. Now, I don't have that number down pat. I can look it up and try to remember. But to me, the fact that even one Israelite did not leave, even one stayed behind, that just boggles my mind. And yet it is the case that the majority did not leave Egypt. So we have a large group of Israelites leaving. We have a mixed multitude leaving. We have all of these people saying, I am done serving Pharaoh. I am done serving this man, serving this empire, serving this process. I'm done with that. I want to serve God. I want to follow this God, the God who has wiped out every Egyptian god there is, including Pharaoh himself, by the killing of his son. Now, is Pharaoh done? No, we'll see next week that he goes after Israel. You see, Pharaoh could not get it through his thick skull that he wasn't in charge. that he had someone over him, that he wasn't alone. He wasn't the end-all, be-all. He wasn't. And I've been watching things happen. And like I'd said, we need to be looking, and we need to find out, is there something today that fits this? Can we look at this? And how do we apply this in our lives today? And I will tell you, one of the ways we apply this in our lives today is when we look sometimes at our leadership and we see the same characteristics as we see in Pharaoh. Maybe we need to step back. Maybe we need to step back. Pharaoh hardens his own heart at first. Pharaoh hardens his heart at first. It says so at the beginning. And then about halfway through this, all of a sudden we see God saying he hardens Pharaoh's heart. And it's not that he made Pharaoh say no, because Pharaoh had choices. But that everything God did seemed to strengthen Pharaoh's resolve to fight back. Everything God did seemed to strengthen Pharaoh's resolve to say, I'm not giving in to this. I can't. I can't be wrong. I am the best. I am the only. I am the one. It's me. He saw himself as the epitome, the whole of Egypt. And until his family was directly impacted, he wouldn't let him go. We see next week he still isn't wanting to let them go. God still has to come in and rescue his people. You think he would have figured it out? Had someone ask a question this week. What is your tipping point? What is your tipping point? At what point do you look at a series of events and say, this is not what I signed up for? At what point? How much does it take? And I think that's a good question to ask ourselves of, well, who we follow, how we follow, who we serve, who we agree with, who we don't agree with. What's the tipping point? What does it take to recognize when it's more than what you signed up for? There was something that happened this last week, a famous worship leader who's led prophet worship leader. I don't know how to describe him. All I know is the first time I saw him, something in me didn't go well, and I've never been able to stomach it. And I didn't understand it, but I understand it now, because now it has come out that some of his prophetic words he got from looking at people's social media before they came to his events. That's what's been said. But even more so, that people who worked with him have accused him of sexual harassment. Not one. It's not one. It's 7 accusations. Have people been touched by God in his messages and in his ministry? Yes. Has he been a good leader for God? No. You know why? People have tried to correct him in the past, and he has refused to be corrected. He has refused to submit himself to any form of correction, instead stepping out from under authority of anybody else, having his own organization now. No authority structure. No willingness to listen to anyone say that he's done anything wrong. I know others that are there too that have said, I've never done anything I need to ask forgiveness for. Really? I have. I think everyone here has. I think everyone on the face of the earth has done something wrong that they need to ask forgiveness for. At what point do we recognize where someone is a Pharaoh and stop following them? You see, there's a mixed crowd that went up with them, a group that were not Israelites. There was a large number that started saying, Pharaoh, you're not getting it. Pharaoh, there's a problem here. Pharaoh, are you listening to your advisors? And he was not. He did not, because he was the final word. And God came against every god of Egypt. Not only that, but he came against, well, he came against everything Egypt thought that she stood for. He came against the water source, the Nile. Egypt was the richest in terms of the water available. You come off the desert to Egypt. It's security. You know, they were safe in their neighborhoods, but there were predators. There were flying swarms of insects. There was frogs everywhere. There was lice everywhere. All of this stuff came against their security. You couldn't do anything about it. You couldn't keep it out. Egypt was the breadbasket of the world, and God came against that. The locusts ate everything. The hail didn't knock down. All of this, the livestock, the grain, the air, the climate that they could predict so well. Well, guess what? They couldn't. Egypt even had pride in the fact that their babies grew up well. God says, okay, I'll take your babies. There's a lot that's happening in Egypt. There's a lot happening around us. There's a need to follow after the right thing. When it comes down to when Israel is actually told to step out, when Israel is finally told, step out, now go. You're being driven out, but now go. It begins with something that's kind of different from the way it works in the world at large. It's the way of the world, wrote Israeli Rabbi Moshe Zvi Ner. I read these guys, but I can't pronounce their names. Moshe Zvi Neria. In times of revolution, grand, sweeping changes, everyone is swept outside. Personal matters get pushed to the wayside, and family life seems to get little attention because this isn't the time to invest in the home. This is the time to stand up outside. It's time to hold signs. It's the time to march. It's time to do all this stuff outside. But the Exodus begins in an opposite way. It is first a family feast of liberation and regeneration. For the entire nation to be stable, we must first bring stability into our private family sphere. For the nation to be stable, we must first bring stability to the private family sphere. Anything disrupting the private family sphere is a disruption of what God is for. God has them as family. And if your family's not big enough to eat the whole lamb, get your neighbor, take the lamb together, share the lamb. The family and the neighbors together inside their home, quietly celebrate first. The revolution begins at home. Change begins at home. I used to say this when people would say, we need prayer in the schools. And if there's prayer in the home, there will be prayer in the school. I can tell you that right now. I want my schools to teach character. Then you teach character. And you live character. Because it's one thing to teach it, it's another thing to be it. To change the world, we must first of all change ourselves and our families and those within our sphere of influence, our friends. Doesn't do much good to get out there and fight a war to help bring stability, or it doesn't do much good. I'm going to bring it back to the food boxes we give. It doesn't do any good to take and give away food if you haven't fed your family first. Because your family will suffer. It doesn't do any good to fight for the rights of your neighbor if you're not fighting for the rights of your family. It starts with you. It starts with my heart. It starts with your heart. It starts with us saying, okay, God, enough is enough. You are God, I am not. I will do what you want. And don't expect the pharaohs of this world to get there. Quit expecting it of them if we aren't doing it ourselves. If we are not willing to change ourselves and let God change us, we can't expect it from those outside of us. That wasn't a direction I thought I was going to go with this message. I thought I was going to stick with the concept of what does it take? What's your tipping point? You know? What is your tipping point? And then it came back to this other thing that says, you know what? When you finally see that tipping point, bring it home. When you finally reach the place that says, I need God, I need to follow him, bring it home. Make sure it's here first. Greg and I were talking the other day about the food bags, and I said, you know, we haven't been giving them out. How do we expect people in our congregation to be giving them out if this is something that we haven't done? And part of that is because we've just gone through a heck of a lot, right? Yeah. I mean, pardon the language, some people don't like the word heck, but we've had a lot happen. It's not been easy for us to get out and about and do stuff, right? It's getting better. We've only got a couple more weeks. He's got an appointment on the 11th of February with the orthopedic surgeon to look at it and say, can you take this off now, please? It would be nice to take it off, right? We've had all kinds of things happen that have slowed us down in doing some of the things we know we need to do. And that's where this came back to me, where it says, it's to change the world, we must first of all change ourselves and our families and our friends. And that sort of change, the only one that matters, does not happen by marching about and shouting loudly and proudly. It happens when we first of all talk and listen, remember and reflect. It happens indoors. It happens one-on-one. It happens by asking questions between each other. There are a lot of people that disagree with a lot of things that I believe. And that's okay. But before you get mad about something that I preach about, come and ask me. Let me share my reasons behind it. Share where I'm coming from behind it. There are people who don't like some of the things that are going on in the world around them. They don't understand why the next door neighbor supports this group and this next door neighbor doesn't. And maybe we need to come back to talking to each other and finding out why. What do you support? What is it really supporting? Because I don't think anybody is supporting excessive violence. Last Sunday, There was a group of protesters who interrupted a church service. How many of you read about it or saw about it? How many of you read both sides of the story instead of just the one? Why were the protesters there? Because an associate pastor or a named pastor there is an officer over ICE. He's a pastor of a church, and they're saying the way that your men are behaving in our community is unacceptable. How can you stand there and preach the love of Christ? How can you stand there and preach the love of God when your men under your authority are behaving in ways that are unacceptable, that violate the Constitution, violate personal rights, that bypass justice? On the other side, I'd hate to have someone come in and disrupt our service and all that. And I love what one friend of mine said. I'd just sit down at the keyboard and start playing Amazing Grace. We can all sing that, right? I don't care who you are. There's a lot of difficulty on both sides of issues that are coming to a head in our country right now. Before you go out and attack someone you disagree with, sit down and ask them questions. What do you support? Why do you support this? What do you understand is happening? Because here's what I understand is happening. Here's what I see happening. We can come to terms with, this is what I see. This is what I see. Recognizing there's a different side to the story, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Okay? There was another shooting today. Another person has died in this battle earlier this morning. A protester. It's hard, because when you step back and look at it, what you're going to find out is there were mistakes made on both sides that led to that. When an officer is involved in excessive force, there's usually a reason for it. Doesn't excuse it. Please understand, I don't believe that it excuses excessive force. But a lot of times there's actually legitimate reason for the beginning of the process. We have to step back and we have to sit around the tables together and discuss. It has to start in the home. Revolution isn't going to come just by being out holding signs or holding weapons. And if we want a true revelation for God, we need to do it the right way. With love, with peace, with God's heart. We need to remember we're all God's children. Some of us are really good pharaohs. Some of us are really good pharaohs magicians. We like to step up and we like to support and we want to be there. But the reality is, what does it take for us to recognize that it is a very complex situation? And the solution is not going to come from shouting at each other. It's going to come from listening to each other. I think it's going to come from sitting around the table of the Lamb of God who was slain for our sin. And I think we need to start recognizing that. We need to sit around the table. And we need to watch what God is going to do. Because he's going to. The spiritual challenge we have reading the book of Exodus is how to encounter the great story as a message or a parable for our own pilgrimage in this world. May God help us see its patterns of meaning that will lead us closer to his heart.